Okay, so this is the route that we took through England by bicycle. We came over from France, from Calais, taking the ferry. There was a really grumpy customs officer who almost didn't let us into the UK, but she did, and we got over just in time for the Saturday night puking party in Dover. Then the next morning, into the rain and fog, went up to Canterbury, down to some uninteresting campgrounds, down to the coast where the wind hit us really, really hard. Made very slow progress as far as Camber, where we stayed in a really expensive hotel but got the room for super cheap. Then we were rescued by relatives of mine who I had never met, the Hancocks, and driven to Brighton, and we stayed with them, John and Janet Hancock, for 2 nights. Then back on the bikes, and we went up to around here where we had some Warm Showers contacts, Helen and Jim, and they helped us with our Linux wireless problem. Then continued up to here where we had a chance meeting with Josie Doo's family and Josie Doo herself. She's a cyclist and author, has written a bunch of books about her tours. Then, because we met Josie Doo, we were running a little late, so we to meet our friends. So we jumped on a train from Reading to Oxford, and there we stayed with our friends Gil and Caroline for about 3 days. And in that time, we got our vaccines, very expensive vaccines that we needed for more east. Then we said bye to our friends and back on the bikes down to around here where I met more of my family that I'd never met before, Jan and Jeff, and found out lots of stuff about my relatives. Then after 2 nights with them, we got back on the bikes and went up to the very uninteresting Milton Keynes, where there was a completely annoying hostile guy. He was very rude, but very polite people at a pub that let us camp behind. Then we camped behind another pub here. Then up to the train at Rugby, where we caught a train to Derby and had more Warm Showers contacts with Diane and Richard. We've done a lot of cycling around the world, in China and South America, for example, and those two inspired us to get going on writing our blog. They also gave us maps and some suggestions on cycling the north of England, so we jumped on a train all the way up to Penrith to start the last third of a cycling route called the Pennine Cycleway. And there we had a nice little campsite here. Our first sight of midges, which was a little disappointing, but we thought they were only in Scotland. But they don't know any boundaries. And then we had a nice little camping thing on a farm run by some Australians. Then a not so interesting campsite in the forest. And then to up around here we found a hostel, and we met a guy in that town who was walking, and he had walked something like 200 miles in 5 days, and we were laughing that he was walking faster than we were cycling. Then we continued up, got lost in this forest, beautiful forest, but we got lost in it anyway, had to backtrack to an uninteresting campground, and then back on our bikes to a little town of Wooler, where we stayed in another hostel, and in that hostel we bought our tickets for Marrakesh in Morocco. And then the last little bit of cycling through the Pennine Cycleway to Berwick-upon-Tweed, and that's where we ended in England. To be continued.